We have quite a large number registered for this workshop this morning, so we'll let a few more people join us in the next couple of minutes. Hope you're enjoying your Saturday morning.
Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Director. It's so nice to see you here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
My morning started at 5:40 this morning with the City of Marietta for 9/11.
Oh my goodness. A wonderful celebration, I hope.
It was a wonderful turnout from the community down here at that early hour in the dark with the 9/11 memorial down there and a bunch of people that were prepared to do a 5-mile jog from the first responders that I will plan on joining next year. And I've got pictures that I'll hopefully post later today. So they were running in formation with units following them for 5 miles they were going. So good on them.
What an event to be a part of.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And good morning to you, everyone.
Good morning.
So glad you guys could all join us today. We're excited and hope to get your green thumb going today too.
Absolutely. We still have individuals joining us. Thank you for your patience.
Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Director.
Lisa, I can continue to admit.
Thank you, Janice.
If you want to go ahead and start with the presentation.
Thank you. Yes, I would love to. I would like to say that before we get started, please join me in a moment of silence in remembrance of 9/11 events. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to welcome you to the Water Efficient Landscaping Workshop brought to you in partnership with the UCCE Master Gardener of Riverside County and Western Municipal Water District. This is the mark of our 10th anniversary, so we're very pleased. And let's see, very pleased that you're joining us here today. It begs appreciation to all of our supporters over these last 10 years. A very large group of Master Gardeners. I see here we have Janice Bynum, who was our coordinator for many years. We also have Janice Rosner, our coordinator, Rosa Olays, who is the coordinator with the Master Gardeners. Actually, Rosa is she works in the offices of the Master Gardener program and coordinates all of the volunteer services. If you know anything about the Master Gardeners, we are purely volunteer services. And it's a very large and very important part of our community support services in the gardening world. And from our Western team, the Water Resources Department and Strategic Communications Departments, as well as our Board of Directors and the rest of the Western team serving our customers. Very pleased and will continue to provide these educational opportunities for our customers and the community at large. This morning, we're going to focus on landscape design and plants that thrive in the Inland Empire. So even though you may have specific issues going on in your yard, like pesky gophers and weeds that are just intolerable, we have resources for you that will be there to help you, like the helpline at Master Gardeners. And we're going to be posting those resources, links, and a variety of contacts that you can reach out to get those questions answered for you. But here today, we'll be listening to Rob Whipple and Allison Loki tell us all about design. And we have 8 designs in this new tool that you've all come to listen about. So at the end of the presentation, we're going to do questions and answers. And Janice Rosner is going to collect all of your questions at the end. She's going to provide those to our speakers, and we're going to have a great collaborative effort in addressing your questions. In October, on October 9th, we're going to hear from Celeste Cantu and a member of Western staff on the drought and how it impacts our gardening, and help you to understand new gardening practices and at-home water conservation practices to help us get through these heat waves that we're suffering. So without further ado, let's see if we have anything else to cover here for you today. I would like to introduce 2 of our esteemed board members are with us today. And that, on that note, Director Brenda Denstedt, thank you so much for joining us on this day. And we also have our newest board member with us, Laura Broughton. Are you with us? Let me find you. Please wave and say hello to our great group, our audience today. And we hope that you enjoy this presentation as we move forward. And Rob Whipple is a water resource specialist who is dedicated to water conservation programs here at Western Municipal Water District. And Allison Loki is a conservation, education, and communications expert. So we have the expertise for you to ask questions to today, and we have a wonderful new tool that Rob and his team have developed. So without further ado, Rob and Allison, take it away.
Unmute. There we go. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you to the Master Gardeners for allowing us to pretty much, this is a debut. This is the kind of the first public unveiling of our Landscapes with Style guide that really is, and Lisa said that we're going to talk about design. We are going to talk about design, but I think the previous Master Gardener presentation on design really gave you all of the background that you need on it. And hopefully what we've done here is shown some of those tools when you're doing a design. We've actually done the designs for you using some of those tools that you learned about previously in the previous Master Gardener one. So we're going to go through that. And these designs are really to inspire you. We've got 8 different styles here. And the idea is that you take away some ideas and to create your own style. So that's what we want you to do. Don't feel like you have to use these styles. Don't feel like you have to use these plants. It's both inspirational and aspirational. And the aspirational part is that we're encouraging the use of native plants, which for this audience, I don't think I need to encourage you too much, but we do have about 37 plants in this style guide, and about 17 of them, I think, are native plants. So that's the aspirational part. So we want to inspire you to create your own style, and then hopefully, you can also do it with a lot of native plants. Now, there's a limited number of plants on here. There's a limited number of styles. We could talk all day about this, but we won't. We'll try not to. So I'm going to go ahead and, one other thing I do want to mention is that this came out of our water use efficiency master plan. This was one of our main pieces that we wanted to use to help promote turf replacement. And maybe at the end, maybe I'll announce a new turf replacement program that Western's going to have available. And I think you'll like it for all of our customers. But I do also want to recognize one other person who was intimately involved in developing this landscape style guide, and that is Kelly Grady, and I believe she's on today. And she was the graphic designer on this, and I think she recently retired, perhaps because this was just so good that she would be able to top it later. And she did threaten that she was going to join the Master Gardeners. And then I came back and threatened that we were going to use her to do other products like this. So anyway, thank you, Kelly. Fantastic work. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Rob.
I'm going to move ahead here. And one last thing on the plants. I am certainly not a plant expert, although I did sit next to Pam Pavella for 6 years. So I'd like to think that some of it floated my way, but that is why Allison is here to help with all of those questions that I can't answer. All right, so I'm going to do a few of my stylish thoughts, and then we'll have Allison do a few thoughts, and then we'll go on to our website, the Western website, which is going to be your best way to access the style guide until we can actually get a whole lot of them printed. We are limited on the print quantities right now. Our customers, Western customers, can get them at our office if you want to come by, but the quickest way is going to be on the website, and we'll show you there. Oh, I think Director Denstedt was showing us the actual print version. Yeah, it turned out quite nice. So, all right. Oh, there we go. Okay, so a couple thoughts on the style guide as we go through before I actually get to the individual styles. I said this was aspirational, right? So all of the plants in these styles are all blooming at the same time. So that won't happen. So I just want you to remember that, you know, we're trying to show what they could look like, what they'll look like when they're blooming. And but remember to check all of the details about the plants so that you know when they will bloom, because they won't. We tried to make them, you know, start kind of early spring and then include plants that will bloom into the fall as well. So just remember to check that. Remember to check the hydro zones. We tried to put the natives kind of together and the non-natives together as well, so that you can water them separately. So that is something else to remember, is to group them appropriately. And speaking of grouping, my preference on design is to group plants together, particularly the smaller ones. The big ones maybe not, but the smaller ones like the Margarita Bop, the penstemons, and some of the other penstemons that have smaller, narrow flowers, they're just going to look better if you group them together. So groups of 3 or more. And you'll see that in the designs that we've tried to do that. Another thing is to just start small. Changing out your landscape is, as all of you know, I'm sure, it's a major project. If you're doing your whole yard, it's like adding a room onto your house, and you'll probably hate the contractor by the end of it. So you can start small, maybe a 10 by 10 spot, use some of these plants, see what it looks like, try it out, and you know, see if that style is appropriate for you. And look for rebates. If you're a Western customer, again, I'm teasing it now. I'm not going to tell you what the new rebate is, but there is a new rebate coming. But at the minimum, if you're not a Western customer, at the minimum, there's a MET rebate, a metropolitan rebate of $2 per square foot for taking out living turf if you have turf that you're going to take out. All right, with that, I'm going to let Allison take over and give us some helpful hints.
Good morning, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up? Not good, good, good. So I'm a lot chattier than Rob, so I had more helpful hints. And I've been doing this a really long time, and I've done several gardens over and learned a lot as I went along the way. So I had to really pare it down, like what were my favorite helpful hints? And I guess the first one is you've got to really have a good plan. You need to spend a significant amount of time planning what you want. And just to give you an example for a timeline, if you say, I want to start my great garden and I want it completed in 6 months, you should be planning for 4. before you ever take anything out of the ground or put it in the ground. And what's the best way to plant? Well, go to gardens and see what you like. Go to native or drought tolerant plant gardens, look around your neighborhood and see what you actually like. Because the yard has to reflect your own personality and it should be what you want, not necessarily what everyone else wants. On an aside, I live in a very residential neighborhood in Riverside. I have a large lot, I have a small house. So I have almost a quarter acre of landscaping, which is a lot of landscaping. In my neighborhood, you see grass, grass, grass. My house, grass, grass. Around the corner, there's a native plant garden. But over time now, the people across the street have pulled part of their grass. You're being part of an early adopter phase. And part of that is just planning and forcing your neighbors to do that as well. If you're going to do the project on your own, start small. And you can use the style guide to copy a design. Don't hesitate to do that. But there are other resources out there available for you so that you don't have to spend a lot of money to get a design. If you're going to do a large project, hire a designer, which doesn't cost as much money as you would think. And the other good side of that is even if you get a designer for your entire landscape, but you elect to only do a small portion of it right now, you still have the design, which you can use later and as you go along. You don't have to do everything all at once. Be super disciplined. Pick a plant and materials palette and don't deviate from it. If you say, I'm going to plant 80% natives and I'm going to use these 5 plants and I'm going to plant 20% non-natives and I'm going to use these 3 plants, stay with it. Because when you start adding in plant, if you go to the nursery and you say, I like that plant, I like that plant, I like that plant, and you buy 1 or 2 of each, your yard's going to end up looking like a mess. So pick a plant palette, pick a materials palette, and stay with it. That folds right into my next one. Nothing ruins the flow of a garden, which is what you should be looking at, some flow, nice, easy transition from plant to plant, like too many different items. Native plants require the least maintenance. I cannot emphasize this enough. I told you I have a large landscape, and I do. It's too big, really, for one person to maintain. But, you know, I walk by my natives every day, and I don't do a darn thing to them except twice a year when I might trim them back. The rest of the year, I pretty much ignore them. But my non-natives, I got to tend to. For example, I have some large tree roses. I love them. They're worth the trouble. But they're the ones that I have to feed. They're the ones I have to trim. They're the ones I have to check for bugs. Whereas my natives, I just walk by them and let them do their own thing. And I really encourage you that when possible, buy from your local nurseries. They typically have the best plant selection. They're less expensive and they also know their plants really well and they can be more helpful for you. Next slide, please. So Rob and I were talking, you know, I have plant favorites and my plant favorites aren't always the same. They change. For a minute there, I really loved my tree roses, but right now these are my plant favorites, this slide and the next slide. So on the left, you'll see in that ugly little red circle, you'll see in May 2016, the plant that became the plant in May 2021. And that's a California lilac. So see how tiny and pathetic it was in May of 2016? When I redid the front landscape, which you can see it when I first put plants in, you'll notice my plants are really small for 2 reasons. One, when you get them small, they tend to adapt a little bit better. Secondly, it's a lot less expensive when you buy small plants than when you buy big plants. And I was doing a lot of this on my own, so budget was really an issue for me. So on the left, you see that tiny little plant, and then underneath it, you see the beautiful blue flowers on the California lilac. And if you look toward the back, you'll see a friend of mine named Stephanie, and she actually comes and helps me in my yard. She's 5'5", and you can barely see her head peeking out from it. That's the growth of that plant in a little over 5 years. It's a spectacular plant. The pictures don't do it justice. On the right-hand side is a different type of California lilac. And I didn't have a picture of it when I planted it. For some reason, I can't find it. But it was literally like a little coffee cup size plant. And it's called Snowball. And it looks this good all year. It only blooms for about 2 months in the year. It's an early bloomer. It blooms from about February to about April or May. The lilac on the left blooms for about 2 months, but it's a little bit later. So you're never going to believe this. They have like no irrigation, none. No matter this whole drought thing going on, I walk by them every day and say, looking good. There's no irrigation to them at all. I have never fertilized them. I have never trimmed them. I have never irrigated them. They're natives. They just live here on their own and they look fantastic. If you do not like bees, these are not the plants for you. At any one time when they're blooming, they maybe have 500 bees on them. The bees are very interested in the plant. So sometimes just to experiment, I'll walk right up on the plant, like put my nose right up on the plant. The bees don't care about me, but I'm not allergic to bees. And I'm also not afraid of bees. Every kind of bee you can imagine, from native bees to honeybees. And they look pretty good. They look very good year round. They don't drop their leaves. But again, no irrigation. Next slide, please. So I had to pick another plant that was my favorite. And this is a Rogers Red California native grape. And you can see on the left when I planted it in April 2016, and I didn't have a lot of pictures in between. Then in November of 2020, I decided, then you see October 2016, where a friend made that arbor for me and it's starting to grow up the arbor. By November 2020, I decided to make it a lattice because I wanted it to cover that ugly block wall that separates mine and my neighbor's house. So you can see in November 2020, I started training it to grow on the wall. Well, by June of 2021, that's what you're seeing. Is it basically now run almost 30 feet and it covers the entire block wall. That's a panoramic picture, which is why it looks a little funky. It does produce grapes like you see there, but I went out this morning and I got some grapes. They do have a seed in them, but they're certainly edible. They're actually pretty good. They don't get huge. They get about that big. Birds love them. I leave most of them for the birds because there's no way me or my family can eat all of those grapes, but it does produce fruit. It looks wonderful. And in the fall, it turns just like our autumn colors. It turns yellow and red, and then the leaves drop off and you see this beautiful grapevine all trained out along the wall. Again, this is a plant I have never fertilized. I have never watered. I just let it be. I have trimmed it back because it's such a prolific grower. The last thing I want to remind you about when you plant natives, they will give you a size. They'll tell you, oh, it's going to grow 4 feet by 5 feet. Plan for something bigger than that. Often they grow bigger than that, especially if you're not fertilizing them, which kills them quickly. And if you're not watering them, which especially if you water them in the summer, you will kill them very quickly. If you let them be, they will grow much, much larger. So make sure you give them space. And I think that is all for my favorite plants, Rob.
And just a couple links for you here real quick before we move on, but I'm going to be going off of our link on our website. It's a platform called Issue, so it's a digital magazine type of platform, but that's where the link is. It's on our website, wmwd.com. If you're on the main website, you would just click on efficiency at the top and then landscape style guidebooks. So that's one link. And another one, and I just want to give credit where credit is due here. A lot of the information I got on these plants is available on the Inland Valley Garden Planner. This is Chino Basin Water Conservation District's website, done in conjunction with Bob Perry, a local architect of 40 years, I think. So, I mean, that is where I got pretty much all of the information on these plants, and a lot of great additional information. We were trying to figure out, well, how should we add more information on our website? Well, I'm thinking no, because it's all there on the Inland Valley Garden Planner. So they were a great big help, and a lot of good information there. They have a new kind of similar design feature now on their website, so it's worth taking a look at that. All right, so I think I'm going to go out of this. Give me just a second. Oh, there we go. Okay. We'll post this again, but we're going to save the questions till the end. But then feel free to contact either me or Allison. And there's our contact info. I think the Master Gardeners will grab that. All right, and I am now. What am I going to do here? Just need to new share. There we go. Okay. So we talked about how the style guide is supposed to be inspirational. And I want to acknowledge one of the inspirations for the style guide itself, because Allison and I were talking one day, and I'll let her talk a little bit more about Irene, but I just want to say, Allison and I were talking one day, and she was saying, oh, my piano teacher. And she gave me this great story about her piano teacher and how her piano teacher loves her garden. So Allison, could you just do a real quick, I mean, it was worth getting a quote from Irene and putting it in the guide, and that's where this came from. So Allison.
So yeah, I've had the same piano teacher for like, gosh, I'm 60. She's been my piano teacher since I was in my early 20s. I've taken lessons years off and on for years from her. And she's a gardener. Like, that's what she does. She teaches the piano and she gardens every single day. She's now 92. And every single day she gets up in the morning and she works in her yard for an hour and a half. You cannot believe how fantastic the shape she is in. But she told me one day, well, that's what I get up for. That's what I do. I get up every morning, I get my coffee, and I take my walkabout. And I am convinced that this is the secret to her longevity. And she gets such pleasure from it. And I think those of us who are gardeners, in any way, shape, or form, whether you're an edible gardener, you're a native plant gardener, you're just a gardener, you enjoy your landscape, you enjoy your family in your landscape. Irene was an inspiration to me. I mean, I'm fortunate I come from a long line of gardeners, but Irene has been such an inspiration for me. And I think she's an inspiration actually for everyone, that at 92, she still gets up and gardens and is upright and strong and prunes. She mows her own lawn with a push mower once a week during the summer. I think she's very inspirational about the wonderful effects. I mean, after all, the Chinese saying is, he who plants a garden plants happiness. And I think Irene is just a wonderful inspiration for all of us.
Yep, that is, as soon as I heard that, I said, well, Allison, get me a quote, because it's going in the guide. And we're going to give Irene a signed cover, a framed cover as in return for her inspiration. So, all right. And again, that's the idea here, is that these are all ideas. And we want you to have, we want joy in the yards. These are yards that we like. These are yards that we enjoy. And these, in some sense, they're also yards for others, but really they're for you. So, you don't have to have the fanciest yard on the block. You have one that you enjoy. And so to that end, we also have a style quiz here that can help you get to what style you might want. And I think I was going to have Allison walk through this, but I think in the interest of time, I think I'll keep going. But I'll just give you an idea. You can choose whether you want a lively or a peaceful yard, and then do you want butterflies or not, or do you want a zen or a succulent garden? So this gets you there. Flowers, layered, soothing, and dramatic looks. And then little descriptions over here. So that's the idea with the style guide, is to help you focus a little bit and get down to maybe a style that you might be interested in. All right, and with that, we're going to move to the first style, which is a hummingbird style. And so what we've done here is we've got some natives and we've got some non-natives. And then we also have, we tried to give you a little bit of a design, and we're calling it garden by numbers or plant by numbers. Try to make it easy, simple. You can adapt this, feel free to move things around, or, one thing I didn't mention is like, well, how come you didn't include this plant? We ran out of space, we ran out of time. So feel free to substitute plants in that are your favorites. But these are plants that in general should attract the hummingbirds. And so we've got the Margarita foothill penstemon, and then we have the Chitalpa as the focal point. This is, I guess one other thing I should mention on this is that the scale on some of these plants might not be quite the way it really is. So again, be sure to check the descriptions. So in this case, the Chitalpa does get 20 by 30 maybe. So that's going to be a little different than what you're seeing right here, but it gives you an idea. And then second layer, you've got the Manzanita in the back, and the Howard McMinn, probably at least 6 by 6, if not 8 by 8. And then we've got some lower ones, some other natives in there. We've got the California buckwheat, and then the California fuchsia, actually, which gives you that late fall flower. In fact, I just looked outside this morning. I didn't see it yesterday, but I saw it this morning. There's a flower on my fuchsia and there was a hummingbird in it. So couple other ones we might not, wait. So this one kind of has it's almost a hedge in front with the Mexican bush sage. Those can be trimmed, those can be hedged. And then just remember to, you probably will cut those back all the way down in the wintertime, and then they'll pop back up, or you could even cut them back in the late summer, I think, too. So something else to remember is for some of these, after they're done blooming, you might deadhead them and then you have space there. So just something to keep in mind there. All right. Yeah, okay, we'll go on to the next one, butterfly. So butterflies are always nice to have. Love to see them floating by. Again, we did the bubble design here. And we do have a butterfly bush. What butterfly garden is, it's not complete without a butterfly bush. And those are butterfly magnets. I will warn you though, that if you buy just a regular butterfly bush, the standard one, not one of the cultivars, it will take over. They get huge, 12 feet, maybe something. I mean, just be aware. What we've recommended here is the dwarf. This is dwarf Buzz, I think is what Scott over at Chino Basin was recommending. And that's closer to 3 or 4 feet. And that's much more manageable, fits nicely and still attracts your butterflies. We have a crepe myrtle as the focal point there. And then some desert marigolds, grape soda lupin. The grape soda lupin does actually smell like grape soda, if you're not familiar with that one. And that one's a good one for bumblebees as well. Kind of the second layer, second highest thing here is the lion's tail that gets 5 or 6 feet. And then we also have the bush sage and then the lantana, which can also be hedged if you want to do it that way. We have it in front in this particular design, and then flanked by yarrow. And then the poppies are kind of in the middle. And remember, those, you may want to cut those out after they've done blooming, and then you'll have some space there. So just be aware when you're when you're putting them in. All right, and because so last thing on butterflies here, we do have narrow leaf milkweed, and I've got it tucked away in the back. It can look a little shabby after it's done blooming and it's dry around this time of year. So maybe you don't put it right in the very front of the yard. So just something to keep in mind there. But that one is the plant for monarchs, and we want to help encourage our monarch butterflies. And then because we want to keep encouraging butterflies, here's another butterfly design. A few different plants. So we've got the Chitalpa here and again, the Howard McMinn. California buckwheat, you know, Allison had the California ceanothus as her favorite. California buckwheat, I think, is mine. And a bunch of different ones. There's the St. Catherine's lace, which is gigantic if you want that. This is the one we spec here is just the regular California one, the inland one. The ones you'll see in the hills, they do just fine in the garden. And like Allison said, you walk by them and you go, yep, doing just fine. And for me, this one is one that the flowers look great in the spring. They're white, they're covered with bees. They're covered with bees I've never seen, other insects I've never seen. All the natives love it. But then they turn a nice chocolate brown that really looks nice, and you don't have to deadhead. You can leave it on until maybe late winter, early spring, when you want to decide to want to cut it back. And like Allison was saying, they will grow a little bigger than you think. I think I had read California buckwheat 3x3 or 4x4. So I put 2 of them in an 8x8 planter, and it's, I think they're probably 6 feet tall, and they filled the whole planter. So they do get a little bigger, especially if you give them a little bit of water. All right, I have Spanish lavender specced in here, but for both butterflies and bees, English lavender works just fine if you prefer that. I was just up at my parents up in Oregon, and my mom's English lavender was just covered with bumblebees. So you'll get butterflies and others as well. Okay, moving on, desert style. So a little less, you're not as tight on the spacing here. Some of the desert flowers that you'll get, like the California poppy, desert marigold, brittle bush as well. Now the brittle bush is one of those earlier bloomers, so you'll get flowers in late winter, early spring. And then you'll get the Desert Museum Palo Verde. So this is your, I think ours at our office in Riverside is still has some flowers on it. So you'll get some later summer flowers. The Desert Mallow is a little different. It's the really pretty, well, that's on the cover behind me. Let's see, can I point? Nope, wrong way. There, right behind me. That's the Desert Mallow, very nice and pretty apricot flowers. I think it's sometimes called the apricot mallow. And then the other one I kind of want to point out here is slightly different is the Baja Fairy Duster. Very nice flowers. You can see them in the design there. And I have to give our illustrator credit because she did a great job really getting those flowers and all those individual little lines there. Pretty amazing. So beautiful flowers on the Fairy Duster. There is a cultivar that I've seen recommended. It was called Sierra Star. And this one's a little smaller and a little tighter, a little more compact. The regular Fairy Duster can spread out a little bit. So if you prefer that tighter, with a tighter look with a little more flowers in there, perhaps that cultivar is for you. It's a little smaller, 3x3, I think. So there's our desert. One other note on the desert. Rocks are nice, boulders to have in your yard, and put plants near them. It can be a very nice look. And my recommendation on boulders would be get bigger than you think. As big as you can get, I would say. I've seen it happen where you get a rock, you think, oh, wow, a 2x2 rock. And then you bury it, a third of it, and then all of a sudden you have a really small rock. So I would say get bigger than you think so that they actually stand out and are dramatic in your yard. And you may have to have somebody else do that, have it delivered. Southwest Boulder delivers. I'm not sure if Whitewater Rock and Supply delivers, but Southwest Boulder definitely delivers. Okay, moving on a little more here. Tasty style. Okay, so before I start on tasty style, Allison, did you have any other comments on the plants we've looked at so far?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. You know, California buckwheat is a spectacular plant. I have read more than once that it hosts more birds, butterflies, bees, and other insects that are important to your landscape than any other plant. And I actually do have 6 of them, and they're an incredibly satisfactory plant because you don't do anything to them, and they look good all year round. So that was one that stepped in my mind. The other thing is I really appreciate the fact that you're talking about size here, because size matters. You do not want to get an overcrowded landscape where you can't even walk through it to work on it. Maybe you're going to have to do weeding eventually. Some of these plants get so dense that you don't have to do a lot of weeding, but I myself like a little space between plants so that I have hummingbird feeders up too and other things as well. And then the milkweed that you had, milkweed can look really icky after a while, but it does reseed, and it's an excellent way to help not only keep butterfly populations going, but bird populations, because it's kind of sad, but birds will come and eat the caterpillars too. But that's just the circle of life, and that also helps our native birds. So thank you for asking, Rob. Thank you.
All right, so next up is Tasty Style. And so we tried to, part of this came out, we were originally going to call this Heritage Style, with a nod to the citrus industry and the history in our Riverside area. But I think Tasty Style works too. And so we do have citrus in here, and I know, and I believe I have it at the end where if you are in an area, and unfortunately we are, that does have the citrus greening disease, you may not want to plant citrus just yet, and wait until the master gardeners can advise you on when it may be better to, when it may be safe, as it were, to plant citrus. So for now, at least where we are here in Riverside at our office on Alessandro and Meridian, we're within 5 miles of known citrus greening, and this is also HLB is the other name for it. It does kill citrus, and it can affect the citrus industry, and there's a significant concern about it. So unfortunately, I mean, I included it in here anyway, but you may want to substitute other plants such as pomegranate, additional pineapple, guava, avocados perhaps, or stone fruit, nectarines, something like that. But any of them really work because, the style is tasty. And so you can have a lot of different ones in here. We've got a grapevine in here. Maybe you want the Rogers red grape that Allison talked about also has nice fall foliage. It does turn a nice red color in the fall, but the grapes aren't quite as good as some of the other ones. So, up to you on that one. And then you'll notice that we do have milkweed, penstemon, California buckwheat in here, and that's to bring the pollinators in to help pollinate your Tasty Style. Okay, a little more here. I want to leave time for questions, so I'll keep going. Flowery Style. And again, what we tried to do with different perspectives, backyard, front yard, side yard, we tried to throw these in here, but we're giving you puzzle pieces really, and you can kind of put those puzzle pieces into your own puzzle and in your own yard. So tried to get a long throughout the year blooming period here. So, again, we have brittle bush, and that's going to be your late winter, early spring. And then you've got all the way into California fuchsia starting now and going into wintertime. And then we have a few other non-natives in here, the iceberg roses, or the tree roses, as Allison mentioned, blanket flower, and then the carpet roses, which if you need to fill in space does work pretty well. And then lantana as well, another familiar one, and some lion's tail there for the to give you some height in the yard. All right, going for another one here, different one, succulent style. And what we tried to do here was get some of the more interesting ones. And one of the most interesting, I think, is this aeonium here. This is called Zwartkop, and should be available most places. But you can see it's a really dark, dark red, almost black with a yellow tinge. And then the flowers are spectacular yellow. And if you mass these together or put them in a row or group them together, like we were talking about, that can be just a fantastic look. For size in this one, we've got the Bhutan blue. That's a foxtail agave. So those get about 5-6 feet tall. They'll give you some height. We have another kind of interesting one here. It's called lady slipper plant. We're still trying to track down availability on that and how available that is. But an interesting plant with these lime green stems, and they kind of almost look like an octopus, or they look kind of interesting there. So that's what we were going for here. And then the Yucca Bright Star just really glows in a landscape. And so if you've got the dark aeoniums there, you can throw in these yucca around them and you'll really have that contrast with that yellow. And then flapjack plant is also known pancake. Those are kind of interesting too. So that's what we were going for with this one. And then lastly, the Zen style. And so this is your more peaceful style. This is your a little more orderly in this one. And we tried to keep it kind of with some straight lines here. And then the perspective is you're looking from underneath your Palo Verde, and you've got those wonderful flowers, and probably you've got maybe some white gravel. And then you've got those wonderful yellow flowers dropping onto that gravel. And then, even after they're done blooming, the flowers are still there on your gravel. And so that was the idea here, was to have a peaceful yard that you can enjoy some peaceful time in it. And we've got jasmine in the background covering that fence or the wall. All right, and then, so last one, a couple more tips here. And let me move this one. And then the plant list, of course, with the botanical names. And we are developing additional, we're calling them worksheets that have the individual styles on them along with the plants and the botanical names, because you'll need the botanical names if you go to the nurseries to make sure you get the one that you want. But, we have some style tips on sustaining your style. Cooler months are coming up, so now's not a bad time to start thinking about it. Mulching's good, but make sure you keep the mulch just a little bit away from the actual trunk of the plants. And I think, and I was just doing this yesterday, but weed therapy is actually good for the soul, I think. So you may have some weeds out there, but it's good for you. It'll help. Again, hydrozones, planting the natives together and putting them on a separate zone for your irrigation or watering by hand. That's what you want to do. We deliberately didn't have Ceanothus in this list because it can be a little touchy when you plant it. And if you give it too much water, it's not going to make it. So I'm not saying don't plant it, but that's why I didn't have it in this particular list as your starter plants. So that's why it's not there. A lot of these plants, if you think about it, the native plants, they're out there on the slopes around your homes, and they're not getting any summer water. And that's how they've adapted. So we start giving them too much summer water, other than say a nice once a month wash off because of the monsoon or the thunderstorm that came through, then their roots start not liking it and they tend to decline and they won't make it after a couple of years. So just something to keep in mind on the natives in particular. And that's why we're recommending having them on a separate zone.
Can I say something about that real quick?
Please.
So Ceanothus, or the California lilac, Rob's absolutely right about that. I myself have killed them by thinking that they must be thirsty and that they must need a drink in the summer, and then having them promptly die literally within a week. So Rob's right. It's a little bit tricky. You want to keep your natives grouped together because you're not going to water them the same. And once they're set, once they're even been in a year, you're going to pretty much not irrigate them necessarily at all. There are some natives that can tolerate summer water. You can have them like California buckwheat. can tolerate some summer water, but there are many of them like ceanothus or California lilac that cannot tolerate it at all. You literally will kill it very, very quickly. So they are touchy that way, and you kind of have to keep your natives to your natives and keep your drought tolerant plants, which there's some spectacular drought tolerant plants like Spanish lavender on this list that will do fine with a little water. It's a little bit complicated, and I can see why people get a little bit overwhelmed. That's why I think you need to do your planning and take your time.
Perfect. And with that, I think we'll end it there. And with the last couple thoughts, just to reiterate, these are ideas. Take them and make them your own, create your own style, and help inspire others. We plan to work with some of the local nurseries to try to maybe have some of these designs there at their nursery, and hopefully we're working on that. I'll just say that Lisa and I have got that on our radar. And then I just forgot the last thing. Oh, no. So I promised you that I would tell you about our new turf rebate. Now, so again, this is for Western customers, Western retail customers. So unfortunately, it won't be, if you're not a Western customer, this won't apply to you, but you can check with your own water district if you're not a Western customer. And I don't think it's up just yet, but it should be up by next week. $5 a square foot for the first 1,000 square feet. So if you're going to take out, let's say, a smaller area, front yard, something like that, that's about 1,000 square feet, you can get $5. Our current rebate is $3. So we're trying to encourage, this is part of the promotion here with the style guide, trying to encourage those smaller projects. Because not that many people do the great big projects, but these smaller ones, hopefully that'll help encourage it. All right, and I'm going to stop talking because I know we've got a bunch of questions, I'm sure, and we'll let those go ahead. And Lisa, should I stop screen sharing?
That would be fine, and we'll turn it over to Janice, who has collected our questions.
Actually, as of right now, we don't have any questions. So is there anyone out there that has any questions? Okay, here we have one. There is someone asking that, mentioning that she has a portion of her yard devoted to vegetable growing. And she's wondering if developing another area or creating a butterfly garden could help with pest control problems.
I'll jump in on for real quick, not necessarily on the pest control, but I would think praying mantis are nice as well. But definitely, if you've got vegetables, particularly like tomatoes or blueberries, having bumblebees is what you want, because bumblebees are the ones that tomatoes and blueberries, they're called buzz pollinators. They shake the pollen out of the flower. Honeybees can't pollinate tomatoes or blueberries, and others, I believe potatoes as well. So the more pollinators you have in your yard, the better off I think you're going to be for your vegetables. So I don't think it's going to cause any problems.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so either. I wouldn't think it would either.
I did just attach a link to IPM, which is pest management, from the Master Gardeners. And you can look up your specific problem there, and you possibly will find additional information. There is also something called, if you bring the good bugs in, they will react with your vegetable garden, because all of your vegetables need to be pollinated. So if you create a butterfly garden, those are pollinators. So you are bringing in the pollinators that will then react in your vegetable garden. Okay, we have another question. Should I hesitate to use native gardens if my yard has a lot of shade? Does anyone want to address that? Or, I mean, I could address that.
Well, let me just give you a thought, and I think we missed a couple of questions above that too. So there are California natives that are shade specific, And I live in Riverside. I don't know where you all live, but you know, our summers have gotten really, really hot. So even my plants that are supposed to be in full sun actually do quite well in partial shade because it's just gotten so hot. So you know, you have your own little microclimate within your yard. And I've learned a lot in the last couple of years about what can tolerate full sun. And as hot as it's been, like last summer, we had a couple of days with over 120, like 3 days in a row. Even the really, really top-notch native plants that want full sun, they actually needed a little shade. So I would take those recommendations on shade, unless it's deep, what I call deep shade under a tree. I would look at those a little bit more moderately. And Rob or someone else, please jump in.
I would suggest you go to Calscape. If you plug in your zip code, it will bring up plants that are native to your area, which will also include whether you want annuals, whether you want shrubs, trees, shade area plants, full sun plants. And ribs, as an example, is something that is naturally a shade plant, currants. Here, if you have a deep shade, as Allison just mentioned, they would do fine. But once again, if you check that website out, they will show you plants that supposedly will do well given our conditions, you know, within our growing areas, which are basically, for all of us here, we're zones 18 and 19, if you were to look at a sunset reference.
Yeah, and a lot of the nursery sites like Las Politas and Tree of Life Nursery, their websites have specific lists of plants that do well in shade.
Yes.
And if you have the California Native Plants for the Garden, the Bart O'Brien book, there are lists of plants for shade there. Coffeeberry, like leatherleaf coffeeberry, one of those, or heuchera. Those do well in the dry shade.
In the shade, yes.
Think of plants underneath oak trees, right? I mean, that's going to be one of the common areas where you'll see it in the
Right. And there is a full description on the Calscape site of those plants and where they grow normally. There was a question as to how to download, or is this style guide downloadable?
Not yet. We have it on the Issue platform, which is basically a digital magazine. We will probably need to resize it down to a PDF size because it's huge right now. It's
Right.
right. But we'll have it there, and we'll have the worksheets available as well. Those will be individual style guide that you can, individual pages with the bubble designs on it that you could actually take to the nursery and say, I want these plants. You can make notes on them. So we're trying to develop collateral for or from the style guide, because the images are just so great. As you can see, the background, zoom background, and then we'll try to do some other stuff too, but we'll have it available on our website eventually. Yes, just not yet.
Okay, and then somebody asked about the challenge of planting buckwheat, California buckwheat, which they would love to try, and they asked for a recommendation for a local nursery.
Well, I think in what Lisa and I were looking at, all three of the main nurseries in the exact Riverside area, we've got Louis, Parkview, and Paradise, and I believe Moon Valley as well. I'm not sure if Moon Valley gets natives from Musa. And so while we're not necessarily saying that you should go to Louis, Paradise, or Parkview, we're not promoting one over another. But all three of those can get natives from Musa Creek Nursery, which carries a lot of the natives. They're down in Escondido. And so you can order from the local nursery in Musa Creek, and they'll deliver it to the local, to Parkview, Louis, or Paradise. So that's a good way to go there. Moon Valley, I'm not sure about, so we'll have to talk to them.
Can I make a comment to that as well? Musa Creek has now been distributing to many of our local nurseries. We have them here in Menifee. They now have reps since Sue Krause stepped down and sold the property. So you may want to check even with your small local nursery and find out if they have natives, because they're doing a huge expansion, which is a super plus for us.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, Janice. A lot of the nurseries, and I'm not all of the nurseries Rob mentioned, they carry so many more natives on hand than they used to, including California buckwheat. The
Yes.
thing is, you plant natives in the fall. So if you're looking for them in the spring, you won't necessarily find them. But if you go now for the next couple months, often you'll find them in stock. So most of those nurseries, in California buckwheat's so popular, it's so important as a plant that a lot of times they carry it, but they will get it for you if you ask.
With things like your lawn, we tend to turn off our irrigation or cut it way back. You should be cutting it way back. Fall starting, water budgets, everybody. So you should be starting to cut back. But the natives, they get most of their water in the winter. And these last couple winters, we haven't gotten a lot of water. So you probably do want to continue to give your natives some water in the winter if there's not much rain. Now, usually they're fine with the rain, but you know, you do want to give them some water in the winter because that's when they're used to getting it, not in the summer.
Rob, we missed a question farther up. It says, what do you do with large ground space in between plant groups? So I never end up with any ground space between plant groups. To be honest with you, if you plant a grouping of plants and you give them their space, typically, especially if they're natives, they grow to fill the space. You know, I guess I like a little space in between so that I can walk around and do whatever I got to do. But I'm talking a small amount of space, not huge amounts. I hope that answers your question. I didn't want to let you go. And then there's also a question on the best honeybee plants. I don't differentiate between bees. Almost all the flowering plants that I have in my yard, with the exceptions of the roses, attract some sort of bee. I try to attract California native bees, which look a little bit different. But maybe someone else can answer that question more adequately.
I could speak to that. Once again, any pollinator plants or native plants that you plant will attract bees. The honeybee is a European honeybee. We have no California honeybees. We do have approximately 1,600 bees that are native to our area. And those are the bees that actually pollinate the majority of our plants. In our home gardens, even in our fields or in local, urban gardens and urban vegetable gardens, it is really those, because pollinators consist of bees, of bats, of butterflies. Well, butterflies are actually very little, but of your wasp. I mean, wasps are a huge pollinator. So, and bees, as you mentioned, Allison, there are a number of bees. So it's not really just the honeybee that you're looking for. You are just looking for bees in general in California.
Yeah, that's right. And then jumping back, I think we did miss a question on the rebate program. And the question was, do you have to buy all the plants? Well, the rebate program, you're not required to buy any specific plants. It doesn't really matter how you get the plants. So if you can get succulent cuttings from neighbors, sure. Or if you get the volunteer buckwheats that have been growing around somebody else's buckwheat, which is what then you're welcome to do that. The big thing is you're taking out living grass. That's the big thing. And you're replacing it with drought tolerant plants. So, but you don't even have to use these particular plants that I have in this list. You can use any drought tolerant plant. And you can even put in, I think you just have to plant about 1/3 of the area. So if you're 3 plants per 100 square feet, or 1/3, 300 square feet of your 1,000 square foot area, something like that. You do need to have a watershed feature. And that means that you have something kind of almost like a sump or a narrow, it could be a stream bed, dry stream bed or wet stream bed, an area where the water is going to flow to rather than flowing out onto the street. So that's what we don't want to see, is any runoff going into the sidewalk, because the sidewalk's not going to grow anymore, we hope. But that's just, wasting water. And as we get through our drought times here, We certainly don't want any water running down the street because that water came from a long ways away and cost us a lot of money to get it here. And to just let it run down the street is not something that we want to do. All right, I think, were there any last minute questions there? Directors, did you have any final
Don't
comments?
see any additional questions, Rob. I would like to make a mention of the Master Gardener program. And I will put in a link if anyone in attendance is possibly interested in becoming a Master Gardener. We are still in the process of accepting applications. So I will add that link. And I think for me, that's it. I want to thank you guys. This has been wonderful.
And it looked like there was a last second question.
They're boring.
There's a last second question on gray water. Yes, you can water with gray water. Gray water is legal in California per the plumbing code. It needs to be a single source like a washing machine though. And I believe you still need to water subsurface, so no spraying it around just in case. Gray Water Action Network. Just Google that and you can get all sorts of good information on gray water.
And Rob, can I ask one more questions of Master Gardeners just for an interest level on something? So I have participated in a number of groups, organizations around our region who have stood up and supported our devastated veterans who have been severely injured in action, and have several of them have received homes in the area because they choose to have Riverside County as their final destination. And Homes for Heroes and a couple of other programs have really been stepping up and bringing a lot of these veterans to come and live in our region. One of the things that they do is not only do they prep the homes for their lifestyles of having to adapt with lost limbs and challenges and other things, but they also try to do that for the exterior as well, as they're designing and doing the homes for these folks to come and bring their families here. I'm curious to see and know, and would love to see any response that you could put in the chat box or raise your hands, if there are any Master Gardeners that would be happy to volunteer their time to one of these organizations in order to support our veterans and do some kind of a design landscape for their homes and be very aware of their drought tolerant needs and their landscaping needs for low maintenance. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there to see if there was any interest in partnering with one of these groups and supplying your knowledge and love for the outdoors, and with somebody who has served our country with dignity. So
Brenda, I don't know if Rosa is still on, but I would definitely say that we should keep in touch, or we could be in touch. And it would have to go through, oh, there's Rosa. Rosa,
Yes.
would you like to speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. We are looking for other opportunities to work with different groups. And one of the things that we are doing is, well, one of our Master Gardeners is taking a course on horticultural therapy, and that is precisely the area that she wants to go into, is working with the military. So we are planning for that, and that's something that it would be great if we could maybe discuss in the future.
fantastic. Yeah, I'm sure that staff has your contact information, so we will
Yes.
definitely have more discussions on that. I appreciate the response. Thank you so much. And
Thank
thank
you
you
for
everybody for
raising.
your attendance today. We certainly appreciate you being a part of Western and being a part of Master Gardeners and doing everything that you do for the community every single day to make it a beautiful place.
Thank you.
Thank you,
you.
Director.
Thank you, Allison.
And
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful
Thank
day.
thank you,
Thank you.
speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Master Gardeners. And everyone have a wonderful day today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.